Okay, gang, let's move into Gallagher's chapters 4 and 5, which I know are out of order, but so be it. It will all come together at some point. One can only hope. I call this chat From the Riches of Published Prose to Rags. Get it? Love those titles. Thursday in class, week 3, which will be tomorrow or the next day, depending on when you listen to this, we're going to focus on Gallagher's stuff. And these are the topics that we're going to be looking at. What writing instruction must do, about the use of professional models, using graphic organizers to complexify and complicate, and yes, I don't think complexify is a word, the not peer review or the anti-peer review, and rags. Let's start with what writing instruction must be. It has to be frequent, which means it should be daily. Doesn't mean it has to be a lot daily, but they should write daily, and you should explain to them each time why they're writing. Don't just give them a journal. Explain what a journal entry will do. Explain how thinking about something before you start to talk about it can be a benefit. Writing has to be taught and explained via direct instruction. You have to talk and teach about all aspects of the writing process. So when I say teach something, damn it, that's what I mean. It also has to be modeled, not only by you talking about how you write and even how you struggle with writing, but it has to be modeled using professional examples and student examples. Remember the Avatar mystery student Paul Yeager from Michigan State, the one I used every time I wanted to teach something with a student example. But that also means you have the opportunity to collect other examples as you become longer in the profession. It should involve choice, and that's going to be a huge topic that Gallagher talks about, that we're going to talk about in a little bit. But the more students can choose, the more interested they are in their topic, hence our stick student activity. And it should be authentic. These are real-world writing tasks. Think about the kinds of writing students will do and try and create assignments that recapitulate those tasks. One of the things I like to do with students, and I don't know if I've mentioned this because I'm senile, is to send them out and spend a day looking at all the writing they do and all the writing they see. It gives them a sense that it's not just the essays they write for class or an essay exam. In addition, it has to be combined with reading. You are teaching reading, you are teaching reading, you are teaching reading. So every time you give them a text to read, you must remember to reinforce the reading skills that you should have already taught or teach the skills that they need. And writing instruction must be honest. Writing can be hard and it can suck and you don't always get to choose and there are rules and the rules are inconsistent. You know what? You have to deal with it. Life is unfair. It's just fairer than death, to quote William Goldman in The Princess Bride. Anyway, the also thing to tell them is that it can be mastered. They can become adequate, competent writers. And you know what? That can be enough. Let's look at choice. For Gallagher, for anybody who teaches adolescents writing, choice is a significant point. Ownership and interest lead to students who are more invested in their work. They have something they want to share or to explain or to argue, and they want the reader to understand what they are saying. So attention to clarity, to voice, to word choice, to presentation is greater if the students are interested. The challenge is, with so many required tasks, how do you, as a teacher, make room for your students' interests? Let's look at Gallagher's list of what he needs to teach for his job in Anaheim, California. No matter where you go, you are likely to run into required assignments. Here are Gallagher's. Here's what the typical composition classroom should teach. Be quiet. You are, sorry. And you have to find a way for student choice. Remember the example I mentioned in class, the student with a traumatic brain injury? She chose a topic, and every other smaller assignment addresses some aspect of that topic. She met all the objectives, fulfilled all the standards, and she did it with the topic of her choosing. She wrote all of these bulleted items at some point over the course of the semester, but the focus was the topic that she chose. I'm going to go shut my dog up. Now, Gallagher examines text structures in his lesson about the restaurant review. And you must analyze the models and teach the elements of the models that you share with students. But teaching is not telling. It doesn't begin by saying, here's a restaurant review, and it starts like this, and then it does this, and then it does this. It begins by asking students, what is the writer doing here? Why is she doing this? Then you name it in direct instruction. You start by asking and not telling. And think about Gallagher's handout, where he has students ask, what did the writer do? And that's a great place to start. Then you ask why the writer did this. That's the next step. Gallagher starts his students with reviews. Why? Because we all have opinions. We love food, or we love movie, or we love records, and we love to share what we love about these things with others. And they're all manner of models of professional and amateur writing using different styles and structures. And there are opportunities to share in authentic ways on blogs, on Amazon book reviews, in the school paper. So you've got an authentic task based on something that they're interested in that still requires they hone their writing chops. One other thing, though, I want you to remember is this. Models are not just there to show students how to write. You choose models because the content is engaging. You choose models because the content is interesting, and you talk about the content. So many times I see young teachers, and all they're doing is teaching the structure or teaching the how-to, and they don't talk about the beauty of the content. Don't forget that. That's why it takes time to teach. So, it's not just reading the models, it's taking the time to have the students dissect what the professional writers did. It's like Peter watching endless hours of golf things so he can perfect his swing. It bores the crap out of me, but he seems to like it. And like Hillocks, Gallagher begins with an accessible assignment, those reviews, and then he moves on to a more challenging one, from the reviews to the opinion pieces. And Gallagher uses My Turn, a feature of Newsweek, and he describes this whole process in his section as magazines as models. The interesting thing is that Newsweek is no longer going to come out in paper. It's going multimodal or whatever, so it's only going to be available online or on an iPad. Anyway, I love magazines, and I use them all the time. In fact, usually in 341, that's what we do, is magazines, and I'll talk about that in class if somebody reminds me. But now that magazines are going multimodal, there's all kinds of options. It's like This American Life. It's not just a story, but there's pictures and music. So it opens up students to truly real-world writing tasks. And I will say that This American Life is the most complicated of those kinds of online multimodal shows. Radio Lab is another one that we'll take a look at. But something like a newspaper, the New York Times Online, Newsweek Online, is a little bit more accessible. Anyway, using opinion pieces like the one he talks about on homelessness provides straightforward pros and cons. And that's one of the reasons, regardless of the mode it comes in, that those opinion pieces are not only easy to dissect, but easy to model and can be provocative in their content, as the homelessness one is. So here's a shitty screenshot of Gallagher's graphic organizer from page 85, but I want you to reference it a little bit as we think about how he uses it. His lesson involves multiple readings of the article. Reading 1, they come up with the central question. And remember, I like that subject, topic, question, answer model. Reading 2, they look at both sides of the question, how the author argues pro and con. And sometimes this is not so obvious, and here it gets complicated, as students must infer either the pros or the cons depending upon what the author's position is. In the 3rd reading, they look at the author's support for both the pros and the cons. And the last reading asks them to frame or paraphrase a thesis. So one thing you must remember is not only are we asking students to dissect the elements of the argument and attend to the craft of writing, how the writer says what he or she says, and we want them to think about the content, and this is provocative content, the homelessness. So think about Essential Questions Global. Homelessness is an essential question global that you can talk about essential question content using. Does that make sense? That was a really convoluted sentence. I want to talk about not peer review, because I have said and I will say that I am not a fan of peer review the way it's so often done. However, I do believe in the notion of the workshop and students working together collaboratively as they work through the writing process. But I have issues with students whose skills are still developing, trying to help their colleagues at the revision stage. To me, no, it should happen at invention and disposition. So I think as they are putting together ideas and as they are figuring out how to organize or arrange ideas and talking to their colleagues about that kind of talking through their work can be helpful. So you can revisit here the multiple activities that Gallagher shares that are opportunities for peer work. And I want to focus on a couple that I think are particularly good. Gallagher lists 10 activities, all of which should become an arrow in your teaching quiver. But these are the activities that I think all students should practice. The funnel. One of the huge issues with student writing is the inability to focus, to narrow his or her ideas to a workable topic. That's why papers get out of control, because they choose this huge topic and you can't say everything. Although write smaller is great advice, it scares students who fear that they won't have enough to say about a small topic. Working with their peers can help students narrow, and these same peers can assist students during the invention process as they work to develop that narrowed topic by giving them ideas for things to write about on a smaller topic. A topic blast is another way that students working together can break a big topic into smaller ones. And that's something that you can do in the classroom to model. Remember, if you're going to give any of these activities, you must model first with direct instruction. Okay. Passing the picture is a group activity I really like because I like using images, and I tweak this quite a bit. I find a picture with historical significance, and I begin from Gallagher's activity of writing a story. And rather than have them build on each other's stories, I have each student in a group write about the same photo. Then they compare their stories, and then they research the photograph for its real story and write a comparison on the vision of the picture they had and the vision of the picture that really is so. I think that's a little bit more fun, a little bit more challenging, a little bit more complex and complicated. However, you can start with beginning writers with the pass the picture the way Gallagher describes it. Also, all of the limited choice assignments that Gallagher describes at the end of Chapter 5 are workshoppable. In fact, here's your chance. You'll note how I am not quizzing on the flipped chats, but, if one does not listen, one might miss this task. You are to choose one of the limited choice examples from pages 106 to 115. Gallagher describes what he assigned to his students. You are to write an assignment for your students that is a sheet you would give to them, and you should have an assignment sheet for all such tasks to save you from the inevitable questions of students who don't listen, so you want to think about the kinds of questions you will need to answer before they are asked. I'm not asking for a lesson plan, just an assignment. However, I do want you to look at the Colorado academic standards and see which standards are met by that assignment and attach a list of those. You can tweak the assignment any way you want. And one other thing, you know that every purpose must be made clear to students, right? Well, pretend you are explaining the assignment to the students, including the purpose, and write that as a little narrative and include that as well. Here's an example, this little screenshot here, of this assignment for you. So this is my example using the assignment I'm making to you. There are no standards, but I would use the performance-based standards for Colorado teachers if I were to include them, or the NCTE, National Council of Teacher of English Standards. And you'll post all of this under the assignments for week 3 and bring me a hard copy, but this is due by midnight, Saturday, February 2nd. Okay? So you can read about it on the assignment board, but people who haven't listened to the chat won't know it, and that's how I'll know. The other two activities that I consider not peer review that I think are cool are also discussed by Gallagher, and one of them is the RAGS one. The collaborative reading we've already talked about, I think, and I think he makes that pretty clear. But I love the RAGS one for multiple reasons, although here again I tweak it. First, I like it because it's quick. It trains students to look for elements of writing. I especially like the version in Figure 4.7 on page 87, where students look at specific elements of an essay, an intro, a thesis, claims, etc. Not to say I don't like the idea of quick reading a whole essay, I do. But like everything in writing, you have to move in increments. So a RAGS on the elements you are teaching as you work your way to a complete written product is my preferred implementation process. Then you get them thinking about the complete essay. But first they start reading little pieces, then you build them to reading a whole essay and looking for whatever element is the focus of your lesson. Finally, in the few seconds I have left, I just want to tell you that this is sort of I want to preview rubrics a little bit, because rubrics are designed to measure performance in those sort of increments. It looks at specific skills, and a rubric identifies those skills and measures each of them. But you don't start measuring them until you have taught them. And so by looking at an essay in its pieces, you're sort of preparing students for that kind of a rubric. So you're looking at topic sentences, or you're looking at evidence, or you're looking at warrant, and that's the focus of your grading at a particular time. We'll talk more about rubrics as the semester progresses. But I have 5 seconds and I'm done. So go do your assignment, all right? Quick, quick, like little bunnies. And I will see you in class.